John Cameron's great.
Tonight, an NBC News exclusive. The Pentagon is about to tell thousands more National Guard troops to get ready to go to Iraq and Afghanistan. Also, we go back to the war zone with U.S. soldiers and learn firsthand what it's like when lives are on the line. Sharp turns, skids, losing control. Tonight, the government orders a big change to keep cars on track. And do you have a chaplain where you work? Spiritual guidance on the job. It's a trend that's gaining faith.
From NBC News World Headquarters in New York, this is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. Tonight, it appears very likely the lives of thousands of American families are about to be turned upside down. NBC News has been told there is an order on the desk of the Secretary of Defense that is likely to result in the alert and activation of thousands of National Guard troops. They'll be sent to war in Iraq. These Guardsmen and women, who will all be leaving jobs and lives and families back home, will be going on a year-long deployment, filling holes in a U.S. military that has been described as thin and running hard. We begin at the Pentagon tonight. Correspondent Jim Miklashevsky with the exclusive details. And Jim, what do we know about this?
Well, Brian, after 4 years of unrelenting combat in Iraq with no end in sight, the National Guard is once more being called to war. Sources in the Pentagon tell NBC News new orders to be signed by Defense Secretary Robert Gates will put 12,000 National Guard troops on alert to prepare to deploy to Iraq. The plan involves the involuntary mobilization of 4 Guard combat brigades from Guard units in 4 separate states. The one-year combat deployments for Guard forces would begin early next year. Early in the war, Guard and Reserve troops made up 50% of the U.S. fighting force in Iraq. Now, as the war has stretched the regular army to the breaking point, the Pentagon has been again forced to tap into the Guard.
I think this was all concealed until we got through the election. There's no way to sustain the current rate of deployment without calling up probably 9 National Guard brigades in the coming year for involuntary second tours.
Today's statistics tell it all. 7 more American soldiers killed in 5 separate attacks and another U.S. helicopter shot down in the past 2 days. The grinding pace of the war is wearing down the Army. 3 Army combat brigades have just been ordered back into Iraq less than a year after they left. That hurts overall readiness, leaving those troops unprepared for other missions.
But when you only have 1 year between, or less, between deployments, instead of the 2 that you would like to have, you then do not train to what we call full spectrum.
The timetable's so tight that 2 Army brigades headed for Iraq were unable to take the usual 4 weeks of desert training at Fort Irwin, California. And it's not going to get better anytime soon. Secretary Gates said today that the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan could leave American forces, regular, Guard, and Reserve, facing these same kinds of deployment pressures for the next 2 years. Brian?
Jim Miklashevsky starting us off at the Pentagon tonight. Thanks, Jim. And we wanted to let you know of an extraordinary story coming up a bit later in the broadcast. It's from correspondent Mike Taibbi and our team with him in Iraq after they received an extraordinary and unexpected view of this war on the ground. Now we turn to Great Britain and a joyous homecoming today for those 15 sailors and Marines who spent nearly 2 weeks in Iranian hands and at least 1 day in those ill-fitting Iranian suits. But already tonight there are new questions about what those young captives were doing before they were caught and whether they might have in fact committed an act of trespass that they were accused of. NBC's Jim Maseda has our report from London tonight.
The British Airways Airbus from Tehran touched down at London's Heathrow Airport after a 6-hour flight to freedom for the former captives. Time to relax and change out of those shiny Iranian government-issued gray suits. Now it was military blues and greens. NBC News producer Ali Arouzi flew with them.
When the plane landed in Heathrow, there was cheering and clapping from the servicemen and women.
Flying business class, they were offered champagne, but reminded by a naval officer that they were on duty, they refused. Once back on British soil, they were whisked off by helicopter to a British Marine base, where their families and friends were waiting, the ordeal finally over. They issued a brief statement asking for some private time to recover.
The past 2 weeks have been very difficult, but by staying together as a team, we kept our spirits up.
Now they face a battery of medical exams and debriefings by psychologists and military intelligence agents trying to piece together who sees them and why. And tonight there's this controversial clue, an interview by a British TV channel with one of the crew at sea more than a week before they were seized, admitting Britain was in the Gulf to gather intelligence on Iran.
Whether it's about any piracy or any sort of Iranian activity in the area.
The tape held until today when the sailors and Marines were safely home. British officials said today intelligence gathering was a routine part of the crew's mission. And tonight, once again, the British government is talking tough. Prime Minister Tony Blair himself calling Iran a supporter of terrorism and telling the West to step up the pressure. The euphoria is over. Jim Masadam, NBC News, London.
Back in this country tonight, a new development in auto safety to report. The U.S. government has announced all new vehicles will be required to have anti-rollover technology by the year 2012. The new feature is called Electronic Stability Control, ESC, and it's billed as a way to save thousands of lives a year, potentially. Our report from NBC's Bob Faw.
At New York's International Auto Show, which celebrates speed, style, and sizzle, the U.S. Department of Transportation today hailed Electronic Stability Control, or ESC, crash prevention technology designed to reduce single-vehicle accidents in this country by 40%. To prevent up to 238,000 traffic injuries every year, and
ESC has the potential to save, as the administrator said, between 5,000 and almost 10,000 lives a year.
Safety tests show that cars with ESC, braking systems automatically controlled by computers, make it difficult for drivers to lose control on slippery roads or in emergency maneuvers, unlike this car on the same test course without ESC.
If the yaw sensor senses that the vehicle is not going where the steering wheel is pointing, then it applies these brakes to bring the vehicle back into line. Driver doesn't have to do anything, just steer it through.
Given the benefits, says the U.S. Department of Transportation, the costs are reasonable, approximately $111 for every vehicle already equipped with anti-lock braking systems. Too late, of course, for motorists like this one, and while the government concedes no system is foolproof, at least beginning with model year 2009,
we believe that it would be 84% effective in reducing single vehicle rollovers for SUVs.
In every new passenger vehicle sold in America by 2012, as familiar and welcome then, the government argues, as seat belts and airbags are now. Bob Faw, NBC News, Washington.
And another developing story involving the auto industry tonight, the possible sale of Chrysler, one of the great American brand names. With us once again from the New York Auto Show, our expert in this area, CNBC's Phil LeBeau. Phil, good evening.
Hi, Brian. This is big business soap opera. The future of Chrysler, which is already up for sale, could involve the return of a controversial figure from its past who wants another crack at trying to run this company. 89-year-old billionaire Kirk Kerkorian, who once tried to take over Chrysler and later sued the automaker's German parent company Daimler-Benz, now wants to buy the Detroit automaker for $4.5 billion.
It is very soap opera-like to have him reappear to ride to the rescue of Chrysler after they joined up with Daimler-Benz, which he was very much against in the late 90s.
After losing more than $1 billion last year, Chrysler is downsizing, with 13,000 employees losing their jobs. Kerkorian wants members of the United Auto Workers to buy a stake in his Chrysler and help remake the troubled automaker. It would be revolutionary for the auto business. And today, some workers in Michigan said they liked it.
That's the best thing I've heard yet, that we own a piece of what we do. It'll make us more productive, I believe.
As optimistic as some Chrysler workers might be about Kirk Kerkorian and the UAW buying Chrysler, keep this in mind. At least 3 other companies also want to buy Chrysler. And Brian, this process could stretch out until well beyond the end of this year. So we're far from seeing a done deal here.
Just beginning. Phil LeBeau at the New York Auto Show for us tonight. Phil, as always, thanks. Fascinating new census numbers are out tonight. They show Atlanta is now the fastest growing U.S. city. expanding by almost 1 million people over just the past 6 years. The Pittsburgh metro area leads the list of declining populations, followed by Cleveland and Buffalo, New York. More news to report tonight on that pet food recall that is creating high anxiety for a whole lot of pet owners. Tonight, the recall has expanded. It now includes dog biscuits sold under the Sunshine Mills brand, as well as under private labels that are sold at grocery and chain retail stores. When Nightly News continues here this Thursday night after a break, NBC News in depth. As promised, our own Mike Taibbi on the ground and under fire with U.S. soldiers in Iraq. It's part of our special series on the war on the line. And later, is there a chaplain where you work? Could this trend be coming soon to an office near you?
Thank you for Bonnie and the time that she...
Back now, as promised, with NBC News in depth tonight, an extraordinary view of this real war in Iraq, a perspective that our own NBC News team got on the ground. They didn't expect it when they returned last week to Iraq while chronicling the lives of several soldiers from the 3rd Infantry Division, the 3rd ID, who we've been following as part of our series, Putting Their Lives on the Line. Some of them are on their 3rd deployment. Tonight's story begins with a mission that took a life-threatening turn. Here is NBC's Mike Taibbi.
In this confusing war colored by the question, who is the enemy, the objective on this morning was simple enough: to raid a growing al-Qaeda stronghold in the tribal farm country 30 miles south of Baghdad. As one soldier put it to us, at least this time we have a chance to go after an enemy positively ID'd as the enemy. And in this phase of the war, that's been a rare set of circumstances. We were with a squad from the 3rd Infantry Division helping to search houses that seemed to have been suddenly abandoned.
Come a little closer.
Now we live in fear.
Sure enough, this farmer said al-Qaeda terrorists had forced many of his neighbors from their homes, and that he and his extended family had gathered in a house up the road. At that house, the obligatory search
Carbon in and you can smell me fire.
turned up ammo clips, and then this.
Found some command wire for detonating command wire IDs.
A coil of the copper wire used to set off the improvised explosive devices, IEDs, that had been the greatest danger to American forces. That wire was found in this man's truck, and though he wasn't an al-Qaeda import, he was ordered detained, sending his mother into uncontrollable anguish. Captain Phil Denton had seen it before. It's got to be difficult for you, too, to...
Oh, yes, it is. Unfortunately, nobody likes to see their relatives leaving.
But he also knew IEDs had been the scourge of the war here, so his suspect and 2 others were brought in, and we began the slow return back to base. But...
Where to head, right there?
As night fell, our convoy rolled into a nest of IEDs. Apparently, the enemy we never saw clearly saw us, wired those IEDs during the hours of the raid, and then set them off as we drove by. One explosion totally disabled this 37-ton Bradley tank, blocking our narrow dirt road escape route.
This blast here took my gunner.
The vehicles summoned to help were hit by more IEDs. We counted 7 in all, and we had to spend a long, tense night in al-Qaeda country. Easy targets for mortars and long-range sniper fire. It took half a day from daybreak to check for additional IEDs and get this tow vehicle in position. It'll take another half day to get the disabled Bradley back to the base. We were lucky. A few soldiers injured, but no one killed. A near disaster netting a few marginal suspects and little else.
He says if he gives up any information, they'll kill him. It's a constant thing with these guys. They say, yeah, I may have information, but then they turn right around and say, I'm scared. I'm not going to give you any information. And that's how we pretty much end up with everything.
This is the war away from the headlines. Days of routine, grave danger, infused not so much by boiling rage or pointed politics, as by sadness and deep frustrations. Mike Taibbi, NBC News, near the Tigris River, south of Baghdad.
And when Nightly News continues in just a moment, we'll return to safer ground somewhat. This week in politics, did it just shake up the race for president? It may be spring on the calendar, but it doesn't look it up in Maine. The folks there are digging out from over a foot of snow tonight in some parts of that state, where the city of Portland was hit especially hard. This unusual late storm brought down trees and power lines and forced the governor of Maine to declare a state of emergency, and here we are in April. Speaking of the calendar, if the old theory is true that a week is a year in politics, this week's been quite a year so far where the race for president is concerned. When you think about it, going back just to last weekend, a lot has changed among the major candidates, and we've still got a year and a half to go. NBC's Andrea Mitchell tallies it up for us tonight.
Hey, Mary, you doing well?
It's been a week that has turned the presidential campaign upside down. A new Republican frontrunner in the money race now facing new scrutiny. So when Mitt Romney cozied up to the gun lobby,
and I've asked for the NRA's endorsement. I've been hunting pretty much all my life.
Reporters asked questions. His campaign had to admit he's only been on hunting trips twice. Even worse, Romney was lampooned in Doonesbury all week as a flip-flopper. Hillary Clinton has the opposite problem. She's been in the lead so long, how will she react to real competition from a rookie campaigner who raised as much money and is now breathing down her neck?
When your name's Obama, you're always the underdog.
And how long will it take before they start openly attacking each other? It's also been a rough week for the other original frontrunner, John McCain. He raised a lot of eyebrows with his description of conditions in Baghdad.
Never have I been able to go out into the city as I was today. So my response to you is that things are better.
Well, what happened with McCain? I mean, like that, going to that market in Baghdad with 100 armed soldiers and helicopters overhead, maybe more than 100.
To be precise, 3 Blackhawks and 2 Apache gunships. But at least he wasn't at war with the New York tabloids, who've been so tough on Rudy Giuliani's wife, he even had to defend her at the ballpark.
My wife is a remarkable woman. She spent her life in medicine, medical science. She spent her life saving lives. I've actually seen her act as a nurse and give Heimlich maneuvers and help people that fainted.
All this, and it's still almost a year before anyone even votes, with other possible candidates rehearsing in the wings.
I think the question here is one of foreseeability.
That's for sure, especially after a week like this.
What are your evening meals? Meatloaf?
Andrea Mitchell, NBC News, Washington.
Now to Augusta, Georgia, and the opening of the Masters Golf Tournament, which was quite a sentimental journey. The ceremonial starter for the first time ever, 77-year-old Arnold Palmer, the man who won the Masters 4 times in his storied career, but feuded with Augusta's former chairman over whether he could still play, was back today. And to the delight of the now a bit older members of Arnie's Army, he smacked it a solid 200 yards. When we come back, getting your daily dose of spiritual counseling while you're at work. Finally tonight, is there a chaplain where you work? And did you know the job of office chaplain is one of those new fast-growing job categories? We are a very religious nation, and so it stands to reason that more people don't want to leave their faith at the door when they head to work, and now more companies are looking for ways to accommodate them. Our report tonight from NBC's Ann Thompson.
How's it going this afternoon?
It is a typical office conversation. With a not-so-typical worker.
You talked earlier about having a new routine.
Chris Hopgood is an office chaplain, making the rounds at mortgage lender Home Bank's Atlanta headquarters.
Are you trying to convert people? No, if they have questions about a spiritual matter, we answer those questions, just like we would if they have questions about how to get their baby to sleep all night.
How you doing?
His employer, Corporate Chaplains of America, is non-denominational. 8 years ago, it served fewer than 50 companies. Today, it serves 450 firms in 26 states. Hopgood says his main job is to listen no matter what the workers face.
Some people just need to vent. Venting bouncing something off of someone.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Home Bank.
As Home Bank's receptionist, Bonnie Foki's job is to smile 8 hours a day. But family and health issues can make that a challenge, so she turns to the on-site chaplains.
You got the results back?
Yes, it makes a difference in that it's instant. You don't have to wait.
Make everything happen.
Though she asks the chaplains to pray with her, Foki does not see them as ministers.
To me, it's almost like having a coach, a personal coach.
Labor experts say employers who don't acknowledge their employees' spiritual sides are missing the boat, especially since today's workers spend so much time on the job. Author David Miller says it must be offered as a resource, not a requirement.
Businesses are businesses. They're not houses of worship, and they shouldn't be confused with being that.
Home Bank says the chaplain program is why it has low employee turnover. A $150,000 a year investment, paying big returns for the company and workers like Bonnie. Ann Thompson, NBC News, Atlanta.
And that's our broadcast for this Thursday night. Thank you for being with us. I'm Brian Williams. We'll look for you right back here tomorrow evening for the Friday edition. There we go. Good night, everybody.